And now a short break to hear a word from a few of our sponsors. Again, please use these guys if you need them. Thank you. We are also brought to you by Josh Badman of Radon Fighters. He can be reached at 217-823-9536. This is a great guy. He's my fellow firefighter. Use post-game spread as a code to save $25 on a radon inspection. If you're buying a home or just want peace of mind for radon in your house, please give Josh a call. He was a standout player at Morrisonville back in the day and then played at SCI for Coach Torr in the early 2000s. Go see Radon Fighters. We are also brought to you by Sheehan and Sheehan Lawyers, located at 1215 South 4th Street, Suite A. They can be contacted at 217-544-0701. I'm talking Pat Sr., Pat Jr., and Willie. They can be contacted for adoption needs, agricultural law, business and commercial law, estate planning, real estate planning, taxation, traffic and minor traffic offenses, personal injury, wrongful death suits. And I grew up with Willie playing baseball on the Southwest Braves. We were state champs. He played high school baseball and soccer at SHG. Pat Jr. was an accomplished baseball player at SHG, SCI, and finally the U of I. We really appreciate the Sheens here. Love this guy. Love this family. Great, great family. So go see these guys. Appreciate you. We are also brought to you by Jason Knadler and the Bank of Springfield. They have a whole baseball team over there. I'm talking Jason Knadler, Justin Knadler, Timmy Ballin Wallen, Eric Weaver, Ryan Murphy, Greg Morantz, Murph Mathiet, Frank Stefano. I trust these guys. I respect these guys. Go see them for all your banking needs. Bank boldly with BOS. Thanks, guys. We appreciate you. We are also brought to you by Body Cemetery, located at 2201 West White Oaks Drive, bodycemetery.com. More specifically, Chad Marshik, the owner, head trainer. This guy is just amazing on so many levels. He is capable of training anyone from a child to a pro athlete to just your normal everyday person to the elderly. And not only is he a trainer, but he is also adept with, physical therapy, nutrition. Everything is going to be customized to you and what you need. There's a movement analysis when you first come in to address any deficiencies you have. It's all customized. Chad is the most positive, happy guy I've ever been around. Body Cemetery will get you right. I would, put my faith in Chad and his trainers any day. So go to bodycemetery.com, get set up. Chad, we appreciate you. Thank you. We are also brought to you by Cardinal Cleaning. They can be reached at cardinalcleaningonline.com and 217-679-6567. The owner-operator, Adam Springer, local baseball dude, family friend, stand out at Chatham Glenwood in the mid-'90s. Also had a stellar career at Rend Lake and Kentucky Wesleyan. Cardinal Cleaning can take care of any cleaning needs you have. Home, business, restaurant, weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, whatever you need, they can take care of you. Get a hold of Cardinal Cleaning. They'll do the rest. Bob Smyer and Ryan Aper on this little break and was like, man, you're not going to believe how electric T. Scott is, man. I'm just having such a fun time going through this with you. And while you and I have made some touch over the years, like I've always been curious about how you saw your career and how you saw some of these little intricacies and things along the way. So it's fascinating to hear you go back through it, and you're doing terrific. So have no reservations there. To jump back in, this is kind of when you jump from pro ball to or from Lincoln Land to pro ball. I remember being there for your going away party and all that stuff. So how was that jump? How was that first year in pro ball for you?
The first year was, it was the most eye-opening experience I've ever had, even in life. And I struggled, which was really hard to deal with because there were kind of high hopes of me going in. And I didn't know this at the time, but the Mariners viewed me as a defensive catcher instead of an offensive catcher.
Really?
And, yeah, and I didn't know that about myself. And, I really never, I guess got professional advice as a catcher in my defense. I was just real raw. Like my blocking was not textbook, and my pop time mechanics weren't, but I had an arm, and I got the ball to second base very efficiently, just kind of ugly at the same time. And I didn't know that about that's how the Mariners viewed me. I thought I was getting drafted because of my bat and just because I was a catcher with a bat,
Yeah.
So they had all these expectations out of me going into my first year, and struggling offensively. I thought they were close to giving up because that's what I thought I got drafted as. But I was still doing pretty well defensively. Not great, but just good. And I think that's what kind of kept me on that semi-prospect kind of status for them.
Yeah.
And even though I had a lot to learn defensively, and I'll get to that in a little bit, but that first year was hands down the toughest of my pro career. Because it was kind of like, it was very similar to my experience with my first year with the Rifles, going into a new, highly competitive, biggest stage of your life environment, relatively. And the same, it was the same in pro ball. And I'm facing these guys that are throwing 95 miles an hour, not knowing where the hell it's going, and catching that too at the same time, but trying to hit off that as well. They say in pro ball, the Midwest League, that low A league, is one of the hardest ones to hit in. And I will 100% agree with that.
Is that because pitchers are so all over the place? They don't know where it's going either, so you can't really game plan?
Yeah, so low A is kind of the place for those better draftees that have a tool go instead of to short season A. And it's, the ballparks are big. The air is dense, in the Midwest League. The pitching is, they put pitchers in low A ball. They put hitters in high A ball, basically.
Oh, man.
And
okay.
So, it was definitely a pitcher's league in that regard. And I struggled, man. It was tough. I was in Everett, Washington for short season A ball for one game, and I went 1 for 3 with a grand slam. And right after that game, I get the call to get the promotion to low A, and I'm like, why? I just got here. I just got settled in with my host family. I'm like, why are they shipping me off? Is something wrong? I was here for one game. But it was because the low A catcher there, he was basically a senior draftee. He basically got a roadmap and a candy bar for a signing bonus, and they were just done with it. And the other catcher was the prospect that got drafted instead of me when I chose the draft and follow route. So his name was Adam Moore, and we were best friends all through our careers and with the Mariners, and are still friends today. But he was the everyday guy when I got promoted to low A in Wisconsin, and I was kind of that platoon backup, and I was a year younger. He got drafted in the 7th round, which was the slot I was projected to get taken in if I did choose to sign my first year. Yeah. So he was kind of me, and I was kind of him a year later, And, he was kind of a roadblock in my career because he was just as good, if not better than I was, but he was who they had more money in, and he was a year older. So, but going back to answer your question, that first year was the hardest year in pro ball for me. It was a huge adjustment. I had to really question myself offensively and what I'm doing and what I need to change in order to have success. So it was a real, self-conscious kind of moment in my life where I had to, this is a business now. This is a career now. I gotta make a change if I'm going to do something and stay here. So
did you feel like you belong, but you just needed to make some adjustments, like talent wise you were there, or how was that? Where was your head at?
Yes. So I knew after the first month or so, I was hitting 181 through 3 weeks, which was the lowest I've ever hit, and butt ton of strikeouts. Usually my walk to strikeout ratio has always been. It was
nice your whole career. Yeah.
Close to 1-to-1, if not a little worse, but, I was up there with strikeouts, man. And yeah, sorry, what was the question?
Oh, like, did you feel like you belonged in terms of like, did you feel overwhelmed? You just needed to make some changes, or?
So talent wise, absolutely, especially with the arm I was showing. I had a really strong arm then, and the ability to manage pitchers was what I think set myself apart from a lot of these other guys. I mean, I'm 21 at low A. There's a lot of guys who are 18, 19 with no college, you know?
Yeah.
So that experience, I think, made me separate myself from a lot of those guys in that league at the time. I knew I belonged. I just needed to know how I was going to excel. And because that's what I want, you know, I've always excelled. I will always find a way to excel. I just had to figure out what that was in pro ball for the first time in my life. And I knew I belonged there. I didn't know what adjustments to make. I didn't know how to make them. It was very confusing and questionable for me at the time, but I just decided to go to work. For the first time in my life, I went to work. You know, I really just relied on talent and raw ability up until then. But I convinced and you know, I think all the Lincoln Land guys will agree. I was never in the gym. I was never lifting weights. I was never committed, even though I was still successful. But in pro ball, you're chasing results.
I mean, I always felt like when you were at practice or in between the lines, like you were fully there 100%. Okay. No, you weren't, you weren't like a weightlifting guy, but your heart and your head were fully there when you were on the field. And I always appreciated that about you.
Yeah. I'll agree 100% mentally, physically, between the lines. I am what Gary Gaetti calls me, is just a gamer. Just show up and go. And guys.
Yeah.
Even if you're sick, even if you're, you know, hurt, you're gonna get in there and you're gonna give it your all and whatever you got. And yeah, I would agree with that.
Now, were you feeling like, was there a swing change that needed to be made? Because I remember a conversation hearing one time. There were points in Lincoln Land when you got pretty spread out, and you know, probably weren't using a ton of your lower body. And I remember one time Weave being like, "Dude, you're a big guy. Like, why are you so spread out?" It's like, why don't you get tall and like show the pitcher who's the boss? And like, maybe that was a throwaway comment. I don't know if you even remember that, but
no, I remember it vividly.
I do remember thinking that you probably had to make some swing changes when you got to pro ball, and I got to see you a little bit. And there's some video out there too, and it did look like a different swing than what I remember at Lincoln Land. Can you expound on that at all?
Absolutely. That was a Squires.
God,
mechanic change for me, but when we did that, it was big guy with a metal bat can get away with this, you know, not having that lower body engaged and involved. But what it did for me was it reduced a lot of movement. It kept my eyes still, and I was able to start hitting the ball to all fields instead of a big pull happy, you know, hack job kind of swing. And that translated, it did at Lincoln Land. And I remember after making that adjustment in the playoffs, I was 9 for 9 after 2 games with 3 homers and 6 doubles. Yeah. And so I kind of bought into that then. Okay. Because it felt good and I was seeing results and I was accomplishing what I was working at. But when you go to pro ball and you have a wood bat and electric stuff on the mound facing you, it doesn't translate. You got to get everything involved, and especially in the lower half, and you got to get some momentum going towards the pitcher instead of just anchored in the ground. And it's funny. I didn't even think about that until you mentioned it, but you're absolutely right with that mechanic change.
Yeah, I remember that. So were there big changes when you got to pro ball, or like was that just throughout all your? I mean, did your swing constantly? Was it constantly evolving as pro ball went on?
The spread out thing with the lower half, I think, just kind of gradually fixed itself over knowing what I needed to do to succeed. I think it was a slow transition over the course of maybe 4 years, honestly. But I think what really changed with me was my work ethic and just getting in the cage and doing these simple drills fixed that on its own. You know, I think just going back to work and obviously, you face that caliber of pitching long enough, you're going to start getting acclimated to it.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think when I started doing well, so that year in low A, when I was hitting a 181 after the first month, I remember going to work for the first time in my life. I remember taking, because I wasn't playing every day, so I had that opportunity to blow my load in the cage, every day and just take 200 swings, before and after games. So that's what I did. And 2 months later in August, I actually hit 340 that month. And I was starting to just focus on lone line drives instead of all or nothing. And I think that kept me around, and that I think that month single-handedly got me that promotion to high A the next year.
Really?
Yeah.
I want to circle back on something you said about your work ethic there, and how you I liked how you were open enough to admit that you probably you weren't a huge work ethic guy at Lincoln Land, but in pro ball, your eyes kind of opened up and you realized you had to. And I always wondered that because, I remember, a version of you, but then there's no way you would have stuck around for 12 years in professional baseball if your habits didn't change to some degree. And I remember just from afar seeing your body change, just seeing pictures of you being like, T. Scott looks like he's lifting weights now, and so that's just really cool. And everyone has the power to change. So that's very cool of you to realize what you needed to do, implement it, and then move forward. So good on you, buddy.
It taught me a lot of discipline real quick and a lot of self reflecting. And I was where I wanted to be, but I told myself I got to be successful. How do I get successful at it? And it's like, all right, time to grow up, time to go to work, time to, bite the bullet and just do whatever you got to do. And that was the first time in my playing life where I said that to myself and actually did it.
Wow. And I'm looking at your stats right here, and I always wondered this. Like, you had an interesting career with the Mariners. Like, you were in high A for essentially 4 years and had 4 strong years, 3 of them really strong. I mean, like a bunch of jacks hitting between 270 and 285, 13 to 15 dings a year. I mean, a bunch of doubles. I'd love to hear the story. Obviously, you don't want to stay in the same place year after year after year. Kind of what were your thoughts on that? Do you know why they kind of just kiboshed you? Was there just so many people ahead of you that they couldn't move you forward? Or I'd love to hear. Sorry, that's like 20 things, but I'd love to hear your thoughts about your time at high A.
Yeah, so they call me the mayor of the California League. And, rightfully so. I've still got a lot of records there all time, but
I bet.
Yeah. So yeah, I was kind of log jammed at the position as far as organizational depth. We had a lot of good guys ahead of me, like Jeff Clements out of USC was one of the biggest bats in the draft the year before me, and he was a solid catcher as well. And I could name off 4 or 5 guys that got and stayed in the big leagues that were ahead of me in that Mariners organization. And so, yeah, I was kind of log jammed. I had Adam Moore, who, like I said, was my platoon catcher and a year older than me. He was always on that next level above me, status-wise or promotional level-wise. And we were all kind of just treading water for 2 years or so, despite how good we were doing at that level. And it was because of that for the first 2 years. But the next 2 years really was, in 2007 was my first year in high A. I was not playing every day. I think I had 150 at-bats, but I had 13 homers or something like that. And that was the first time in pro ball when they started looking at me at first base just to have my bat in the lineup. And I was successful doing that. And then in 2008, I got the everyday starting job, playing 4 out of 5 games as the primary catcher, and had a very similar season. I had a lot of injuries that year. I got plowed at the plate, concussed, broken ribs, herniated discs. I got drilled in the ribs. I broke the other set of ribs that year. I had a hamstring tear, and I had strained labrum for a lot of it. So but even with all those injuries coming on off the DL, I had a good 2008, despite all that. And but I still felt like I didn't get my first full healthy everyday season until 2009. And I think I repeated 2009 mostly because of my injuries in 2008 and the struggle I had coming on and off all the time.
Okay.
And I remember the State Journal Register doing an article on me after that 2008 season in the winter. And I remember vividly telling them over and over again, I was like, I'm just waiting on my first full healthy year. Because I know if I'm healthy and playing every day, I'm going to do better than I have on paper these last 3 years.
Yeah,
So 2009, repeat the level, high A. Kind of bummed about that, but I understood it. And I still saw the logjam ahead of me. Everybody was repeating. So I went into that year saying, I'm going to do something I've never done. I'm going to do something special here. And that was hands down the best year of my career, pro ball wise. Yeah. And a lot of it was, and I know this is a question you've got in the future, but mental.
Sure, answer it now if you want.
Yeah, the mental part of the game became a huge influence in my life in 2009.
Okay.
And that was when we had a mental skills coach, Jack Curtis, who I think graduated from Harvard and is still with the Mariners. He's been there that long and has done that good a job there. And he told me, he was like, what do you want out of this year? He just asked me that question very simply. I was like, well, I want a 300 batting average. I want 20 homers and I want 100 RBIs and I want to win a championship. But I want to do all those things with the goal of promoting to the next level. Mm-hmm. And so he left it at that. He just kind of walked off and said, okay, I'll get back to you. And 2 days later, he types up about 3 pages of self-affirmations that he wants me to read 3 times a day in a very relaxed environment where I can close my eyes, kind of meditate and visualize these things that I want and visualize me accomplishing them. So I did that. I bought in because I was like, I want to do something else I've never done before, just to get where I've never been before.
I'm a huge believer in affirmations. I read affirmations to my daughter every night before she goes to bed.
Yeah, I am too. And the power of the mind over the body is huge, and you can't not respect that out of your mind, And so I gave that a shot, and I was an all-star at the midway point. I was hitting my 310 and 50 on pace for my goal. Yeah. And I was buying in, and it was that moment in my career where I realized I can do what I want to do if I just commit to what I want to, how to get there, Cool. And I started gaining confidence, and I worked my butt off defensively too. I was never the best blocker, like I said, the textbook blocker, but I was out there with my manager, Jim Horner, who we will touch on as one of my favorite of all time later. But we worked our butts off doing blocking drills before batting practice, before every game. We were out there for 30 minutes, just wearing my butt out in the dirt in the outfield track. And that was the year, I think I only had 5 pass balls as a catcher.
Wow.
And that's 140 games, and that's hard to do. And I never considered myself defensive like that before, but that was a big contributing factor to what led to the end of my 2009 season. I'm doing well offensively. I'm on pace with my goals. I'm doing what I want defensively with my work ethic now, finally. And we get to playoffs, and 2009, we had our best season ever. I think we were 95 and 45.
Okay.
I believe. And we're in the championship series, and, come playoff time, the manager has the freedom to do whatever he wants with the lineup. Before that, you're kind of under the organizational guidance.
Yeah.
And so he has me batting 4th and catching every single game. But I went into his office before playoffs, and I was like, Jimmy, I know you're playing me 4 out of every 5, but I want every single game, every single inning in this playoff. And he goes, you don't have to ask. I was going to give it to you. I was like, awesome. And cool. So that was a little bit of momentum, confidence going into it. But I remember game 2 in the semifinals against Rancho Cucamonga. Every roving instructor was there in the organization for Seattle. Every minor league coordinator, every rover, everybody was there. And I remember twice that game, blocking a ball in the dirt, the runner stealing for second, going for second, me gathering, picking up, and hosing him out at second. And that was, doing that was hard for me as a catcher. I don't know why, but it just never happened to me because I wasn't that good of a blocker. But I did that twice, and then I hit a 3-run homer, go ahead to win that series division to go to the championship in front of all those coordinators. And that was a big moment for me and for my career because they finally got to see me do it in a highly competitive environment and do everything I wanted to do and correctly achieve it, and
yeah,
I think that moment, and this is just me speculating, but I think in that moment, all those guys that were there to witness this game said, we're going to bring this guy to Fall League. We're going to invite this guy to Arizona Fall League, which is a highly prestigious level and honor.
Of course. Yeah.
That was the year when Steven Strasburg and Max Scherzer and all these guys were there. And, so we finished that 2009 season. I didn't fully achieve those goals I had self-affirmations for, but I, instead of 300, I think I hit 285. Instead of 20 jacks, I think I hit 15. And instead of 100 RBIs, I think I had 78 or something.
It was a really strong year. It was your strongest year statistically in professional baseball.
Yeah. And I got to give a lot of credit to that work ethic that I finally committed to. I got to give a lot of credit to that, the mental side, strengthening it part of it.
That's awesome.
Yeah. That 2009 season and that invite to Fall League was the first time in my career where I thought I was going to the big leagues. Before that, you just consider yourself, okay, I'm in high A ball. I'm treading water here. How much longer are they going to give me? Am I going to get traded? Am I going to get released? What, all this and that. But that invitation to Fall League was like, oh, dang, okay, so I'm on a top 10 prospect list now. I'm one of those guys.
This is even more confusing then. Why did they send you to the Fall League and then the next year they basically, you were gone after a certain point, back to high A again? Yeah. Man, this baseball doesn't make sense sometimes, does it?
Well, it's a dirty business, but I didn't make the best choices that year either.
Tell me about I want to hear about the Fall League. How was that experience, if you could?
Yeah. Well, I never got to participate.
Okay.
I got sent home for making a bad decision, one of the worst decisions and regretful decisions. But it just involved breaking rules and at the the team hotel with doing the wrong things at the wrong time and getting caught doing it. And it's not something that, and it's not a big deal, but it was to them and it is to me. But that was kind of my punishment because it wasn't the first time either. But they sent me home and took away my invite to Fall League. It was the day before we were supposed to report for it. And that was a major roadblock in my life, in my pro career, and obviously the biggest reason why I repeated high A in 2010.
Yeah. Well, sure, man. It's great life. You got to take some lumps along the way, don't you? Yeah. Man, sometimes they are painful.
It goes back to, failing in order to succeed. And, along the way that moment will always have guilt over me. But like I said, I'm going to trust in God's plan, his perfect plan, the timing of his plan, and I'm not going to question it. But
well said. Before we move on to this last year with the Mariners here and things kind of taking some turns, how were you getting by during the off seasons? What were you doing? Were you working off, jobs or?
I was a traveling gypsy most off seasons. I
remember you on some couches sometimes.
Yeah. I had a suitcase packed full every day in my car, and I was either staying in Lincoln Land somewhere in Springfield or seeing my twin brother in Jacksonville at Illinois College, just sleeping on his couch. But
you were a gypsy.
I was a gypsy, and I was working a part-time job at Family Video, just trying to, pay the little or earn a little bit of spending money. But Yeah, I never really had a home, but I mean, I would visit my mom and, my other siblings up north by Chicago, and I would stay a week at a time there, just to say hi and visit. But wherever I was always working out. And,
Yeah.
I probably spent the bulk of my off seasons at Illinois College with Trevor and working out at their very nice facility there that they have.
Were they pretty welcoming to you to be
They kind of did a lot of, sweeping under the rug as far as me using the gym and tunnels to take hacks off the tee during the day, during a school day. But they were very, very welcoming because they knew and understood my situation. Didn't really have a place to call home. I mean, my mom had my mom and my stepfather had their house up in Pekin, but I wasn't going to go up there and kind of just be alone. Basically, I wanted to see my friends. I wanted to hang out, but I wanted to get work done, in the gym. So Illinois College was perfect for that. They were very gracious and welcoming and allowed me to do what I needed to get done in the off seasons. And that was usually just work out, get in the gym, take swings, do long toss in a glorified 4-court gymnasium. And I got that done there. So that was basically the bulk of my off season workout regimen.
Okay, so and then moving on to your last year here with the Mariners, you get released at some point. I mean, you're having another strong year. You're back in High A. Do you want to take us through what it feels like to get released? One of the worst things in baseball, or do you have memories of that?
Yeah, haunting memories.
Yeah.
So like you said, I repeated 2010 in A-ball with the Mavericks. I was doing well. And finally, I got the promotion on June 6th of 2010. I'll never forget that date. And it was close to my mom's birthday. And I get the promotion. I get on a plane. I'm going to they were on the road then at Huntsville Mudcats. And, I got just adrenaline pumping through my veins. Yeah. And, I get there halfway through the game. So I'm showing up in like the 5th inning with my bag and gear and uniform that doesn't freaking fit because that's all they had on the road. And I'm like, and this guy that's catching there, he was a big league spring training invite. He was going to have that everyday job there. And I was just kind of like, man, I'm finally breaking through here now. Finally, I'm getting here.
Yeah, next level.
Yeah. After 4 or 5 years of A-ball treading water, it's like, finally, I'm in, because once you get to Double A, you have that opportunity to get called up, especially if you do well. And especially if your parent team is in the playoffs too, when they expand the roster. So I pinch hit that night in the 9th inning. We're down 3-2. I hit a double, I think, down the right field line. So I'm like 1 for 1 in Double A. I'm batting 1,000.
Yeah.
And so I think, and we go on the road after that game to Chattanooga. We're in Chattanooga for I think a 3-game stint, and I got a catch that first game, and I remember, what was his name? D Brown, maybe, or not D Brown. Some speedy leadoff hitter laying down 3 bunts, and I hose him out at first, close plays. The third one, I spike him in the back of the helmet, and he gets ruled out. But I'm playing well, and I'm not making mistakes. Yeah. And then that next day, I think it was our second day in Chattanooga. What's his name? Andy Stankiewicz. He's our minor league coordinator. Shows up in town. And everybody's just kind of wondering why. And the manager for my Double A team calls me into his office, and I see Andy sitting there at the table. And he looks at me and he goes, "Travis, do you know why we're here?" And I'm like, "I have no idea why you're here." And he's like, "We're here to give you your release." And you should have seen how everything just sunk in my soul, and how I think I remember not breathing for about 30 seconds.
Forgot how to breathe, yeah.
Yeah, and I was just blown away. I just got promoted. I'm here at Double A. I'm doing well, and now they're releasing me. And it was hard to hear. And after walking out of that office, and somehow I guess the word got through the clubhouse that's why Stankiewicz was there, was to release me. Yeah. And I walked out of that office and then back into that clubhouse to get my things, and everybody's just like looking with their eyes wide open at me, like in disbelief, like, dude, you're one of our top 10 prospects. What is happening? Why are you getting released?
Yeah.
And I just have no words. I'm pale white. I'm about to throw up. And I just quickly gather my crap. I throw it all in a bag as fast as I can. Just to get out of there, because I really just wanted to cry. I wanted to bawl. I was embarrassed. I don't know why I felt embarrassed, but like everybody was just heavy hearted for me and they couldn't understand why. And so, yeah, I think I remember after I grabbed all my things, I was like, how am I going to call my mom about this? How am I going to tell her this? How am I going to tell my twin brother this? Who's been my number one fan throughout the entire process. And it was the hardest news I've ever heard. I shouldn't say that. One of the hardest news I've ever had to hear. But yeah, I was deflated. I was about to give up on baseball, and I had to do a lot of soul searching for the next 2 or 3 days to figure out what's next.
Man, now did you have no idea this was coming? Because sometimes organizations, this is what I think I know, will promote a guy if they know they're going to release him as a way to give him a little extra bump on his resume, like give him a little AA time or a little AAA time and then kick him. You had no thought of that was coming?
No, not at all. And I don't think that was what happened. I think.
Do you have any thoughts on what did happen?
They told me that, I had been treading water in A-ball for some time, and they told me that, your behavior off the field was a factor, not the factor, but a factor in why we're deciding this now instead of when it's later down the road. Mm-hmm. And so that was really hard to hear. That was a very humbling moment. And it was just embarrassing, honestly. And it ruined everything I had going for me that I worked so dang hard to achieve and get.
All ripped away in a moment. Yeah.
In a moment. And I can't blame many other things other than myself and, kind of the situation in the Mariners organization above me. But yeah, it was tough. One of the hardest days.
T. Scott, it is incredible me sitting here watching you as this, almost 40-year-old man, the accountability, the self-analysis, it's cool, man. Just how real you're being with yourself and what you've been through. And it's crazy because when I spent the most of my time with you was 20 years ago. We were kids, right. It's cool to see guys grow up.
Well, yeah. Football forced that out of me, and these moments, these, roadblocks and speed bumps along the way, especially when they're self-inflicted, are times to grow. You got to use that. You got to use those bad moments in some kind of positive way. And do I wish it was different? Of course. Do I know what could have happened if I, just kept my head on straight a little bit better? It's always going to be there in my head, but I've got to live with that. But I will never change anything. I'm glad it all happened. I wouldn't be here with my family and kids if it didn't. I might be in the big leagues making worse decisions. Who knows? And
it's all part of the journey, man. Yeah. So then, were you at a place where you were thinking about being done, or were you talking with your agent about more affiliated? I mean, obviously you ended up in indie ball. So how'd that go?
So well, having never experienced this before, you don't really know how to respond and what to do, how to be proactive with what's next. You don't know. Yeah. And my agent was somewhat instrumental in the next few days, but mostly it was on my own. I had the day I got released, it was probably close to noon, and they already had my flight booked out of Chattanooga back to Springfield. And by the time I got to the airport, I had 7 or 8 independent teams call me along with one affiliated team. And the affiliated team was the Miami Marlins. And they were I think they were the Jacksonville Suns at the time, and they were looking for a platoon type catcher immediately. And I was like, I'm your guy. I'm there. I'm ready. I'm in fit. I'm in shape. I want to. How do we get this done? And by the time my agent and he kind of formulated somewhat of a free agent minor league contract, they promoted their other catcher that was at the level below. So they decided on him instead of signing me, which left zero opportunity in affiliated ball at that time. So here I am, just kind of deflated on that news. And now I'm considering indie ball. It's like, what am I doing? I don't want to go play indie ball. I'm too good for this,
Yeah.
And my numbers don't lie either. I'm too good for this. And, but
you're 25. You're at an interesting age too, right?
A very make or break age for a pro career. And it's either, shit or get off the pot. And so I was like, I'm too good. I still have a lot left. I'm not going to give up. I never even considered retiring. I've just got to put myself in somewhere where I can get the most exposure, have the most success, and get out of here again, And that was Rockford. It was local. It was right next to, my siblings up in Chicago. And it was an easy transition in. And it was at that time, it wasn't the Frontier League. It was
Northern
League. Yeah, that's right. And so that was kind of the not Atlantic League caliber, but maybe just below it type.
Yeah, just a notch below. Kind of like them in the American Association would have been pretty kind of close, and the Atlantic being the top tier.
Right. So that was kind of an easy decision after 3 days passed with no other affiliated interest. And so I signed with Rockford halfway through the season. That season went really well, but
you played well. Yeah,
I got MVP. I think I hit 300 on the button. I got MVP in half the season there, and I don't know how I did that, but So, but the whole time I was there, I was questioning myself, like, this isn't baseball, this is in my eyes beer league, crap, but I just kept grinding. I kept trying to, even there, I just kept trying to improve my craft and working hard. And I really didn't let go of that work ethic, even though I wasn't where I was supposed to be. Yeah. And so I had that good season, finished strong, got MVP, had great numbers. And that was when the Angels came in.
Okay.
They offered me an invitation to a free agent pre-draft workout that was held in November, I believe. And I was all psyched about it. And they didn't just invite me, they invited one of my pitchers from my Rockford team too. So we were there as a battery mate duo, and we and the Angels knew who I was because I played against them. And they liked what they saw. They offered me a AA promise, like we kind of already previous touched on, and then they rolled it. And I was all excited. I was finally back where I wanted to get, back on the AA track, back where, back in an organization that knows what I can do because they witnessed it playing against them. So I was pretty ecstatic about that. And I was starting to make better money as a a free agent contract instead of your minor league contract. So I was stoked. I was so pumped. I was so happy. And then 2 weeks later, that Rule 5 draft happens with the Pirates, and they just, I swear, they just blindly plucked a name to use as organizational depth.
This guy.
Yeah. And that was when, the Pirates, they just do a lot of things wrong. And I was the victim of that circumstance.
What are some of those things that are glaring that you felt like were problematic
for the Pirates?
Yeah.
Just their evaluation of talent. I don't think they do a good job. I think they have a big board and a big sheet of paper that says, all right, we're doing this no matter what, despite progress, despite growth, despite this guy exceeding expectations. They're just going to stick to that. And they're so just robotic with their decision making. And they don't give you a fair opportunity in spring training. I think it's Moneyball with the Pirates, and a poor attempt at Moneyball with the Pirates. You know, you can play Moneyball and play it well, but the Pirates definitely didn't.
Interesting.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a reason they've been in the cellar for 2 decades. You know, it's just.
I mean, I'm looking at these. I mean, you were with them the whole year?
Yeah. So, spring training, I was doing 13, really well.
You got into 13 games the whole year.
Oh, yeah. So, yeah, spring training, I'm on the AAA roster for the bulk of it. I'm doing well. I'm hitting homers. I'm catching well. I'm there with a couple other prospects like Tony Sanchez and
it's a big league time. Yeah.
Yeah. And we're competing in what I consider, you know, even keel playing field against each other. But I get a high ankle sprain about a week left in spring training, and it was a bad one. I've still got bruising.
Yeah, those can be debilitating. Yeah.
I've still got permanent bruising on there that won't go away, and just bummed out. And, you know, I was thinking I was going to get that high A job, to be honest. I thought I was going to be the everyday guy, but wouldn't be there long. And that injury happens, and they stick me in extended spring training after, you know, the clubs break. And I'm just doing what I can, you know, getting my rehab done. Can't make a club in a tub kind of thing, you know. And yeah, so I'm just kind of treading water until I get healthy. And I finally get healthy, and they're throwing me out there in these extended spring training games, and I'm playing every day and doing well. And I think I had 3 home runs in one game against their AA guys that are rehabbing. And so yeah, they come up to me one day after I finally get healthy, and they're like, "Hey, Travis, okay, here's what we got for you. You can either accept your release, or we can send you to AA, where you're going to be basically phantom DL'd until you're needed." Damn. And I'm like, "What the heck, man? Like, what in the world,
man?"
And I'm like, "Are you guys even watching what I'm doing out here? Do you guys even know what is happening?" And I'm just like, man, I'm so frustrated. And I thought I was just waiting on the moment for me to get healthy to return to where I'm supposed to go and be. Yeah. This is why Rule 5 drafted me. You only get 3 Rule 5 picks. Why did you pick me if this is what you're going to do to me? You know, and I was just getting so frustrated. And it was the first time I actually voiced those things to an organization like that. And I was real defensive. I was just questioning their decision on this. And it was the first time I actually voiced that. And they just said, you know, we have other plans. This is a numbers game, and you're not fitting in with our numbers. And I'm like, okay, whatever. I'll take my AA phantom job DL deal.
I remember texting with you during that year, and you kind of explaining that to me, and I'd being like, man, I just felt for you. I mean, I could feel the frustration and kind of sadness coming through some of those texts.
Yeah. And, you know, as well as I do in pro ball, if you're not playing every day, if you're not getting those at-bats against that pitching, you're not going to walk into a game and do what you want.
Hard. Yeah.
It's hard, real hard. So I had to figure that out. And my work ethic didn't change. I was in there every day, but nobody's paying attention to me. Those guys, the Pirates organization, they're paying attention to the 4 or 5 guys that they have on their prospect sheet. And that is it. And the rest of those guys can just F off, and you got to work on your own, and you got to figure it out yourself if you want to stay. So, yeah.
So really kind of a wasted year developmentally.
Really was. I regressed, honestly, and regressed only because I wasn't seeing it every day. I was just I was a bullpen catcher and just waiting for somebody to blow a knee out or something, you know. So I was in AA with Tony Sanchez, and he was good, but he wasn't great. And I just haven't. And I don't want to clown the guy, especially behind his back on anything like this, but he just didn't have the mental capacity and the strength. He was just kind of a child who got $1 million and is making a fool of himself just because of his makeup and who he is as a person here in AA and getting the opportunity. And I'm not. Right. And I've got to watch this. And I know I can.
Let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this: if there was the slate was wiped clean and the organization didn't know that he was a first rounder and $1 million, and it's just you and him playing in spring training off of your merit, do you feel like you were outplaying him, or you would have outplayed him?
Yes.
Yeah.
I did. Okay. I did in spring training.
Yeah. And you feel like you could have outplayed him in AA had you been given the opportunity?
Oh, yes. I do.
Yeah.
I do. I firmly believe that. And I want to be real with myself and real with you with that answer, but I can say with full conviction that I would and I could.
I believe you.
But that was probably the most frustrating place in my whole pro career I was in, to watch him do what he was doing, being a clown out there, and me just kind of I gotta bite my lip. I can't say anything. I gotta just sit here and catch bullpens for the rest of the 6 months of the season and eat my humble pie. But
I have no problem with you saying that. You had a 12-year pro career. You saw a ton of baseball. Your opinion holds a lot of weight in baseball.
Yeah, and I know and I would absolutely admit if I thought he was deserving of that opportunity, but that was just it was so hard for me to accept because I knew it was wrong. But that's just testament to the Pirates and how they handle decision making and where they invest their time and efforts, and that's in their money. So
you probably knew that you weren't going to be re-upping with the Pirates after this season. You feel like you were just out of their plans.
Yeah. I was just kind of delaying the inevitable, collecting a paycheck, but staying in it. Still being around it. I still got my work done, and I was still catching those pitchers every day. So I was keeping my legs in shape. I was doing all the things I could have been doing, but with means to an end. And I was just waiting on that last day of the season to finally, I don't know, I was just delaying the inevitable with myself. I didn't want to have that conversation with myself. Okay, what's next? Just because, I was scared of that realistic answer, and
maybe it's over.
Yeah, it was. And I told myself, I'm not trending up, and got to tell myself I'm trending down now. And that was hard. That was really hard.
But I mean, and how life can be interesting and twists and turns, you get to experience something really cool this off season. At least that's what I think. I think this is when you go to Australia. Is that right?
Yep. So
I'd love to hear about that.
I did all of my own correspondence with that gig.
Really?
Yeah. I don't know how that bug got planted in my ear as an option for off-season, baseball, but I remember reaching out. I think it was the second year in the league's inception, actually, and they were just getting established, and organizations were beginning to send some of their prospects to Australia for that league just to keep them in it. And I think I reached out to all 6 of those teams, and Canberra was the first one to respond back, and they're explaining to me their criteria for how many imports they can have and the level of experience they need in order to be considered. So I think they're allowed 1 veteran and 2 level 4, level 3. It's based on years experience and age and all these other factors. But I was considered a L4, a level 4 player, and they can only bring in 1 of those. And I was just kind of emailing back and forth with the front office staff, saying, just kind of selling myself, pleading my case. And really, it's kind of like AA players that haven't gotten to AA yet, is how I would describe that level of play. So I finally got in. They accepted it. we were just waiting on my visa to clear through the government because you gotta apply for a work visa to go earn money over there, and that was a delay for the start of the season. I think I missed only a couple of games, but I should have been there like 2 weeks earlier. But my visa finally cleared, and it was a glorified paid vacation, man. It was awesome. I loved every single minute of it. I really didn't grow professionally as a player, but I grew as a person. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And just seeing, it was the first time traveling overseas and going through currency exchange and all this stuff. It was just growing experience. And I got to scuba dive the Great Barrier Reef. I got to climb
wow.
Yeah. I mean, I did a lot of, my host family out there was awesome. They were so awesome. And I was making good money, and for the first, probably the most money to date in baseball. Yeah. And it was just a great experience. Their winter, or our winter here, is their summer there. So having to miss Christmas and Thanksgiving and all that with my family was hard, but it was acceptable, and they understood. But I loved my time there.
That's awesome. And then you got to see, got to go play baseball over there and be in the ABL and get that experience. But you didn't, as far as I know, you did not have a home yet for the next season back in the States? Or were you already lined up with York?
No, no home yet. I really wanted to go to Australia in hopes of putting up more good numbers and adding that to my resume as a reason why affiliated teams should reach out. And there were quite a bit of affiliated players in that league, and I was hoping that was that was encouraging for me to see, just because I kind of thought I was giving myself another chance. But it really didn't. I think I was at that time about to be 26, and I'm starting to get too old to send to AA again, because I haven't been tested in AAA yet. So they're not going to just pluck me out and throw me in AAA as a 26-year-old like most of the others. So, that 25-year mark is a big make or break for guys. And it was for me. And, no other affiliated interest. And I think even my agent kind of cut ties after that Australia season, mutually kind of is like, I really don't need you anymore. He doesn't need me, of course. And so, it was a downward spiral there that off season, but back in independent ball we go.
How did you get in? I mean, was this, they called you or you sought them?
I sought them. Are you talking about Australia?
York.
Oh, York. No, they reached out to me along with 6 or 7 other teams that year. Yeah. But I just didn't really care to take the time, give them attention. I couldn't fathom another year in indie ball based on what I knew at that time, and that was just Rockford, this crappy team in league where I excelled at. I didn't want to do that again, even if I was making good money. It's not about.
Were you treated better? Was it a better experience for you in the Atlantic as opposed to the Northern?
Yes, absolutely, and the caliber of play was better, and money was better, and overall better. Yep.
What play level wise? What would you call the Atlantic comparable to affiliated? I've always read kind of AAA ish. Would you concur?
I call it 4A.
4A, yeah, right there, right? Yeah, because it's a lot of those guys that are older. They're in their 30s that were in the show for a while and probably maybe could still play there, but there's just there's not a spot for them anymore. And a lot of former big leaguers are in the Atlantic. Yeah,
there are. So you'll have your 3 or 4 guys that were like A-ball only, but figured something out, but it was too late, and now they're doing really well. But for the majority of it, it's the guys that were in AAA for 5 years, like I was in high A for 5 years.
Right.
Just treading water, but used as organizational depth kind of thing. 4A was how I would describe Atlantic League.
What about the Northern?
Northern League, I would call that somewhere between. So the Northern League, you've got people of all experiences. Like you've got guys that played 1 year of a NAIA school and now got an opportunity in the Northern League.
But you also played with like Randall Simon, didn't you?
Yeah, Randall Simon. So they kind of have that tiered status with like the veteran, the L4, L3, L2, L1, rookie, amateur.
Yeah.
So
Right.
it's a wider range of players that they are restricted on how many of each, but you've got to have so many of each on a roster.
Okay. Well, how was that experience then for you with York before you kind of found your long-term home with Sugarland?
York was kind of another similar situation to when I started out in pro ball. I was they were using me in a platoon style. You know, if there was a righty on the mound that day, I was catching and hitting left against them. And if there was a lefty that day, the other guy was, you know, starting. But I didn't put up great numbers because I wasn't in there every day. I put up very average numbers for my career, but we did really well. We made playoffs. We got to the championship series that year, and it was a lot of fun. It was really fun. That was the first time where I kind of felt like I didn't have any rovers coming in and hounding down my neck or having that pressure or outside influence on your back. It was just go out there and play. This is all about winning now. Let's just go win. And if you're not good enough, we'll just go join another team in the same league.
Was there still a belief in you that if you really had an outstanding, strong year that you could find your way back to affiliated, or was that dream slowly kind of evaporating at this point?
So at that time, I was kind of just telling myself, if I can get somewhere where I can play every day and be healthy and put up a full good year of numbers, that can't get ignored. Yeah. And if it gets ignored, then I'll be at peace with why it's ignored. But I wanted that one last full good year, that full healthy year. And so I was just kind of telling myself, hang on, you got more in your body left. This is a unique and special opportunity not every athlete gets to go through. Right. The real world in life is always going to be there waiting. Just ride it out. Keep riding it out.
That's why I always tell people, man, like, keep that uniform on your back as long as you can. The real world is waiting for you, and it's not going anywhere.
Yeah. And my mom was kind of encouraging me with that same advice too. And but I knew it was coming soon, But like I said, I was just waiting on that one full everyday job to prove to myself that, okay, if this doesn't work doing that, then I'm at peace with it.
So kind of a so-so year there. And then you already kind of talked about how, Sugarland kind of came into the picture, and you met your wife, your future wife, and then Gary Gaetti, former big league guy. I'm sure he was an all-star many times over. Grew up watching him. Brings you into Sugarland, and it becomes this thing. And what's cool about this is you were with Sugarland for 5 years here. It's what it looks like. Mm-hmm. I had my little blip of indie ball too. And I remember a couple guys that were there were a couple guys with Windy City in the Frontier that had been there for 4 or 5 years, and they were beloved. Like, the fans loved them, the community loved them, the manager, like, they were just like, it was a weird thing. Like, not often does a guy stay with a minor league team for year after year after year. I'd love to hear you let's just talk about Sugarland and what that was like for you, and finding this home and having a lot of success. And let's just talk about Sugarland, buddy.
Yeah. So Sugarland is very special and always will be for me. So the year I was with York was Sugarland Skeeter's first year in existence. And having played there, just the 2 series, it was the first series of the season and the last series of the season. And they obviously were in Texas, and the rest of the teams in the league were in the Northeast. So they were kind of on an island by themselves down there, but getting established, drawing the biggest crowds in minor league baseball at the same time. And I loved playing there for those 2 series when I was in York. And I was like, man, I could call this place home easily, Yeah. And like I said, 6 days before spring training, Gary gives me that opportunity and gives me that call while I'm dating my girlfriend who works for them. And I thought it was just divine intervention. Honestly, I was kind of baffled. I was excited again for the first time in baseball, And
this was 6 days before spring training, is that what you just said?
Yeah. And at that point,
really?
At that point, I was retired. I was,
I'm about to say, if you don't have a contract by that point, I guess you're assuming it's over.
It was April. Once April 4th happens and all the clubs break and then they evaluate their need and depth, after that happens, you kind of just know that, okay, there's no spot for you. And I was at that point, and I was on a track with Family Video to become a regional manager, and I was gonna make good money doing that, but I knew it was a friggin' Band-Aid on what I was gonna do forever, Yeah. But I gave up on baseball. I was at that point I was done, and Gary called me then. Yeah, and man, I don't even think I worked out for 2 months leading up to that. I think
really?
I think I gave up physically, and I never took a swing. But Gary,
and just showed up.
Yeah.
I mean, you played well, my man. I mean, 277 and 11 dings with 387 at bats, 25 doubles. You'll take that any day of the year, baby.
That was the best. Okay, if you take 2009 with the Mariners out of the equation, that was my best year in pro ball.
Man,
I was hitting the crap out of the ball to all fields for the first time in my career, and up until I was taking a hiatus from working out, I got to about the best shape of my life.
Okay.
So I was still in kind of great shape hiatus,
riding it out.
Yeah. And so when I showed up to spring training, I wasn't off the couch by any means, but I was it wouldn't take long for me to get back there in good shape, And I knew that, and that's why I accepted it. But I was so excited to just continue my relationship with my future wife, and two, go to a great city and a great place where I actually pictured calling home previously, So first time I was excited in baseball in a long time after getting the dirty end of the business for a long time. And I was catching behind Kobe Clemens, which is Roger Clemens' son, and he crossed us in affiliated ball, and we were on that kind of same level and tier. And so I happily accepted my backup role at that point in my career in life. I was just happy to be where I was in Sugar Land. I was continuing my relationship with my girlfriend, my now wife. And so I was content with that. But for whatever reason, Gary saw me the year before in York. He knew what I could do. He knew I didn't get a good, fair shot with York. And he wanted to give that for me, but it took about 2 months in the season for him to, and I was just being patient. I kept my mouth shut, kept working, and he did. And it was like overnight. I mean, I walked up to the batter's box and I just hit. I was so clear-headed at that time in my life and so relaxed and just, I just started raking. And he says this to me all the time. You turned into an all-star overnight with me. And I was like, I don't know what you're saying. I was doing what I always did, but it took you a while to give me that chance. And
it was your tipping point.
Yeah.
You keep doing the right things. Eventually you tip and successful.
Yeah. And I had a great season, and I had interest again from affiliated ball at the end of it. I had plenty of opportunities to play in Mexico and Japan after that 13 season. Yeah, because even though I hit only 280, 290 or something, I was making loud outs. I was making hard outs, and I was rarely getting myself out.
Mm-hmm.
So, but Sugar Land, back to it being so special, that community there, having a brand new baseball team, which is close to Houston for the Astros, and the Astros fans love their baseball. It was a perfect place to start a new team. And the community there just rallied around it the first year and set attendance record after attendance record. And, which was awesome because it felt like you were playing in a July 4th AAA game every day.
Yeah.
And, so when I started doing well, I don't know why, but I became a fan favorite just because I went from not playing at all to an all-star overnight, like Gary says. Yeah. And so 2013 season, the fans really embraced me for whatever reason. And that next year, I became more involved with the community. So I started giving back a little bit. I started doing a lot of camps for little kids, did so many kind of PR initiatives, going to nursing homes and just being there, and going to, being a guest speaker at a Little League opening day, and all these things. There's 20 million different things that I wanted to do just because I love that community so much. I love that town. I wanted to, and in 2014, they honored me with Community Man of the Year for Sugar Land.
Awesome. So my thoughts about you immersing yourself in the community were totally accurate. You did.
Yeah. And
awesome.
I really didn't do that ever before. I never saw the need for it or the desire. But I mean, Sugar Land was so special to me and it was a place where I could visualize myself living here and staying here and calling this home. And I wanted to kind of just throw roots down to see if it took. And so, yeah, I did that. And if I wasn't a fan favorite before, I was for every fan now, and and at the same time doing well. In 2014, I was injured quite a bit, but I was playing. I think Gary wanted me to play 14 out of 15 games and only catch. And it's hot down here, man. It's 112.
Yeah.
It's different. It's a whole different kind of shape you got to get in to do that. So, I mean, Sugar Land, I'm staying here for a reason, and that's a big part of it.
Yeah. Obviously, you built a strong relationship with Gary Gaetti, and then you eventually, was your last year, did you get coached by Pete Incaviglia?
So, no, I didn't play for Incaviglia. He was the reason, basically, why I called it quits altogether, and it was because in 2017, I had another good year. At that time,
you're 32
years old. Yeah. And I knew maybe 1 or 2 more years physically, and I can do this for it, because I don't want to play and let my body be the determining factor of why I'm not successful. I want to, and knowing that I can still do this and do it well before I call it quits, but I'm not going to let that downhill slide physically and performance wise tell me, this is it. So I was thinking 1-2 years maybe, and Gary gets released of his contract after that 17 season. And the last 2 years with the Skeeters, for me, he promoted me to player coach, so I'm making double salary.
Right. Yeah.
I'm influential with who we bring in. I'm the one negotiating contracts. And we had a special thing in the clubhouse in Sugar Land. We kind of did a screening on who we should bring in or not. We were not going to allow one bad apple in our clubhouse.
Really cool. You were really cool.
And that started when in 2013 with the leaders there then, Gary Majeski, Josh Presley, those kind of guys. And that was a kind of a culture they developed that I instilled as a player coach. And in 2016 was my first year as a player coach, and I was instrumental with that roster. And that year we won a championship, got a ring, and I was so proud of that year. It was another one of the best years of my career.
Yeah, 16 jacks, 264, 16 doubles. Like you're playing, man.
Yeah, and but just seeing that I helped form this team that won a championship was kind of eye-opening for me. Like, okay, maybe managing is a career for me after this. Maybe I can use my talents this way after I'm done playing. And Gary agreed with that and that's the reason why he gave me that player coach responsibility, because he saw that kind of leadership in me. He knows, good catchers typically turn out to be good managers because they're just more involved than any other the position players, pitchers in all aspects. And so that encouraged me. That kept me in it for another year. And so in 2017, Gary got released of his contract. I wasn't offered a player coach position, and I'm making good money doing that, and still getting the chance to play every day. And so Pete Incaviglia comes in and he calls me November 18th. I'm out in the deer stand hunting with Gary at this moment in time when he calls me. And he basically tells me, hey, we don't have a spot for you. I just wanted to make sure you didn't have any questions for me on why and all this and that. He was very straightforward, stand up about it. And I was as well back. But it was hard to accept that was how I was going to end my career in Sugar Land.
A spot as a player or a coach or both?
Yes, all of it.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And he wanted to bring in all of his younger American Association guys that were well below the grade of caliber a lot of us were, that he didn't want back. And so I was like, God, this guy's going to come into Sugar Land and ruin everything that we built here, you know?
Right, this culture. You're right.
Yeah. And I was right. And it hasn't been the same since. Well, mostly because now Sugar Land's in a AAA affiliate for the Astros.
Right.
Those years in between with Incavilla, it went downhill real quick. And I heard about it from a lot of fans, season ticket holders that stuck around and witnessed it and just said, man, we miss you and Gary. This town needs you guys back. But unfortunately, you don't have a say in that, especially when the head coach is release of his contract. So that was the first day I knew retirement happened. Was November 8th. Yeah.
So were there any thoughts of like, I'm going to keep playing, or you were like, this is it. This is the nice stopping point for me?
I knew, and I've developed relationships with those other teams we played against and their head coaches, because they're all the same kind of guys like Gary, just great guys that just want to win and compete and, really good people. And so I was considering maybe Somerset, New Jersey, which was where it was kind of like the
Patriots.
Yeah, it's now actually, I think, the AA or AAA affiliate for the Yankees. Mm-hmm. I would have considered going there if I knew I was given an everyday opportunity. But honestly, we were about to be pregnant with my first child.
Okay.
And that was very influential with that decision because, I think Taylor, my wife, she didn't want me to give up on something that I was so passionate and worked so hard for.
Yeah.
Unless it was on my terms, mm-hmm. And she was very supportive and encouraging of that. But I knew if, my firstborn daughter, if I'm on the road 6 months and half of her life for her first year, I would have the biggest guilt and regret I would have had in baseball making a decision.
Yeah.
So that was a very hard but real moment for me, and I think I know I made the right one, and I was like, I got to start considering other factors here. Yeah. It's the off season. I've got a window here to figure that out. Like I said, I was making good money the previous years for Sugar Land. I was in a financial place in my life where I had that opportunity to use, and firefighting just kind of happened out of nowhere. But it was back when I was still with the Skeeters when it, a seed was planted in my head.
Really? Before we go there, tell me a little bit about playing for Gary and the relationship that you guys formed.
Gary's awesome. One of the best human beings I know to date. All those good qualities about Bull I mentioned earlier about just relatable, personable, friendly, competitive, driven, just all these things. And with Gary, times 5, who's been there, done that in the biggest stage. The guy was a 2-time Silver Slugger, 3-time Gold Glover, 6-time All-Star, just probably barely missed the Hall of Fame, honestly.
Yeah.
And you would never guess that walking into him and running into him.
That's cool.
And he would just have a conversation. He doesn't know a stranger, one of the smartest human beings I've ever met. And
really?
I just have a huge, huge amount of respect and a high regard for Gary, and he knows that. And I think he sees a little of that in me, and we call each other our best friends. We're each other's best friends.
Really?
Yeah. And that
I
really,
can hear how much he means to you in your voice, man. It's cool.
yeah. I have a very small circle of people in my life by choice, but
Sure.
he is in that small circle and he's not getting out of it,
I love it. That's so cool.
So I just can't say enough good things about him, but we're planning a hunt here in 10 days as we speak, so we're still on awesome terms. He's half hour away from me, and he's hands down the top 5 best humans I've ever met.
Shout out to Gary Gaetti, man. That's so cool. You guys formed this bond like that. That continues on, right? I love that. I love how the game creates relationships like that. This ending with Sugarland, did that end the idea of you managing further on too?
So that was really hard to accept. And that's why I call it a divorce from baseball, because I just feel like it ended abruptly, it ended ugly, and it wasn't really on my terms. Because I saw, an independent ball with, especially with the Skeeters, it was an opportunity for those guys that made it to the big leagues who are still hanging on by a thread, but it was their opportunity to retire and do it their way. And they did it, after their last, they would go into their last outing knowing that they were retiring afterwards, and that's how they wanted to go out. And they got that chance to do that. And I always thought that was how I was going to go out. Little did I think it was going to be because of a front office change in the organization, like that. And that was hard to take, but it just felt like a divorce. So it left a bad taste in my mouth with baseball, and I was just ready to kind of bury it in the backyard and put a tombstone on it, So, and I was at peace with that. I really was. I was 33 or something and had a daughter on the way, happily married, just getting established in, Katy, Texas. And I was looking forward to the next chapter of my life. And I really didn't want anything to do with baseball at all after that.
I get that.
Yeah. And I gave private lessons just to earn a little income, and that's kind of how I stayed in it. But that prospective of career managing in baseball, it takes a certain someone to take on that role. A lot of the good ones are managers after their kids are out of college, and they're at that age in their life, and they can devote that time to that team instead of to their family. And my daughter on the way, it was an easy decision. It was tough to choose that decision, but it was so easy to accept that decision.
Yeah.
And so I had to start looking elsewhere. And the fire marshal for the city of Sugar Land used to give me pregame IVs on hot days for day games. And one day he just came up to me while he was poking me with a needle, and he's like, "Trav, you're a leader in this clubhouse. You seem like a smart guy. What are you going to do after baseball?" And I was like, "I don't know." I was doing civil engineering draft work in off seasons too every year for 5 years. And I figured that was going to be my backup plan. And he was like, "Well, have you ever considered fire academy or fire career?" And I was like, "I don't know anything about it. I don't know." Yeah. He's like, "Well, come to my academy." And he had his own academy. And he was like, "Come to my academy. It's 5 weeks long. After that, you get your EMT, you start interviewing jobs, you make $60,000. I'm like, "What?" Tell me more. Because I was at a stage in my life where I've got a daughter on the way. I got to figure out something structured and established real fast. Yeah. And there really wasn't anything else like that within 3 months that I could achieve to provide,
Wow.
So, it was just kind of weird. I call it divine intervention all the time because...
a lot of your path feels like that, like things happening at the right time as we kind of unfold your story here. That's interesting.
It is, and I get goosebumps thinking about it.
I got goosebumps right now.
That was a Bobby Knight quote. You can't fake goosebumps,
Yeah.
And so, can't ignore those kinds of moments, those little winks from God, that just said, it's not yes, it's not no, but it's wait, and so I always respected that, and I always knew that to trust in His purpose and all that. But fire, yeah, I mean, you well know what it's like to become a firefighter, having been one yourself for how many years?
I mean, if you count the military, 12 plus now.
Yeah. So just to get credentialed in Texas, you got to go through, the fire academy, which through his fast track was offering it for 5 weeks. And then you got to go to EMT school, and it's usually a semester in college, but I took it in 7 weeks. And successfully passing those state licensure exams, I was interviewing in 3 months.
Wow.
Which is hard to do. And a lot of people can't say that, but I was committed. I gave up on baseball. I buried it in the backyard. A new chapter. Fire was it. And right after EMT school, and I got my national registry, the first resume I sent off was the first interview that called me back, and that was 4 days later. And in my first interview, they offered me a job.
Wow. Really?
Yeah. It was that easy.
I just want to pause for a second, because some guys will spend years trying to get hired on fire departments. And it's such an incredibly difficult process to go through, highly competitive. There's a ton of credentialing you have to do. So that's incredible.
Yeah. I really did interview well, but it was so short. I didn't think they would. It was only about 5.5 minutes total, the interview. And I was like, wow. Surely that's not enough time for them to be like, yes, we want him, So I was like, still considering, all the other applications I've sent off. But like a week later, they gave me a job offer, and a week later I started.
Wow.
And but I think at that time it wasn't as competitive getting in as it was 10 years ago, like it was 6 years ago. And this department that is still currently my employer, they were 1 year old. It was an ESD that just got, had inception and stuff, and just breaking ground running, growing like crazy with a bunch of new development in their district.
Yeah.
So I think they just wanted warm bodies, to be honest. But I didn't expect my first, application to come back with an interview and a job afterwards.
How long have you been on now for then?
6 years now.
6 years, and you're a driver engineer right now, right?
Correct. Yep.
So, I mean, different structures, different places, but most places you go firefighter, driver, and then some sort of a captain. So you're kind of knocking on that captain door too, aren't you?
Yeah, they've been pushing for me to promote for 2 years, but I just told myself I don't want it yet.
It's a lot of responsibility.
It is, and not really a big enough jump in pay to justify that responsibility. But the biggest reason is for me. I mean, I would have been, if I would have 2 years ago when they were pushing me to promote, if I would have chosen that path and gotten, it would have been the shortest tenure to captain, heard of in this department and many others. A captain in 4 years just really doesn't happen anywhere. But the reason I didn't even consider it was because I want to know that when I'm captain, I can teach driver at a high level. I can teach firefighter at a high level, and I can do those things and do them extremely well. And I wasn't in a place in my career then to say I could do that.
I totally get that. You want to be proficient in all those things. And it's easy. I've seen guys, make driver quickly and then make captain real quick. And they miss that time being a driver and those responsibilities and being able to, like you just said, communicate what they need, exactly what it entails. There's a lot of minutia to each aspect of firefighting.
The weight of years experience is palpable in fire. Like those years experience, when they put on a prerequisite for a position, I used to think, okay, why do I need to have 6 years before this or whatever, but I stand firm with that. The years experience hold its weight in that job, and captains, some guys try to fake it till you make it and take that leap and take that jump in promotion. But I guarantee you they're not going to be the captain that they should have been in 2 more years.
I 100% agree. And like I said, being a captain is a lot of weight. You are responsible for your crew, for leading them into dangerous situations, making calls on wild, situations that nobody knows the real answer. What's the best thing? So I agree. There needs to be time spent learning the craft. With that said, we're right at our 90-minute break here. So let's take a short break. And man, you're incredible, man. This has been so incredible. I can't wait to keep going. We're getting more into kind of like the shorter questions as we go, but you taking us through this has been incredible. I hope you've been enjoying it.
I have. And it's weird to hear myself say it because I've never really said it before, just the emotions and all this and that. But there's only a handful of people that know my story really. And it's honestly my immediate family, but it's kind of nice getting it out there. It's kind of nice to have someone appreciate like yourself, and just, appreciate the little bits that, I've had to go, the roller coaster of life that I've had. So I appreciate
a lot of guests have said they didn't know they needed this until they did it. So I'm glad you're enjoying it. And let's take a little pause and we'll be right back. All right, buddy?
Yep.
All right, my man.
Cool. Should I click out of this podcast?
Yeah.
Okay.